Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Derek DeLomo coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the city that inspired the name of this show. With over 19 years of experience in the finance industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business, including all the ups and downs that come along with paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Lisa Even, a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and leadership coach who helps teams create what she calls a good ripple effect. It's right behind her. With a background in healthcare operations and team leadership, she now works with companies like ESPN, SHRM, and Disney to teach leaders how to show up with presence, build trust fast, and shape stronger cultures. She is also the host of the Have a Good Ripple Effect podcast. Join us today as we discuss her insight and practical tools that she has gained from her journey. Welcome to the show, Lisa. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you and I have gone back and forth already. So I know a little bit about your background and your story, but our listeners don't. So can you give our listeners a sense of how you got started and maybe what life was like before, you became a keynote speaker, author, and leadership coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a background in operational leadership. So I started my career in healthcare. And when people say like highly protocolized, yeah, like very regulated, seeing people on the worst days of their lives, that was us. And so when I think about
With
creating,
a smile on your face.
with a smile, yeah. Sometimes we're like, how do we keep ourselves like together when, you're just dealing with a lot of pressure. And I did that for a number of years. And my tagline was actually have good ripple effect. And the idea of it was kind of like our team mantra of like, is that good ripple effect? Right? Are we? And it really became this way to almost, I don't know, self police ourselves. And then, we were moving from Wisconsin back to Iowa. And that was the moment I decided, I'm going to take a leap and go out on my own. And I thought I was going to teach healthcare leaders how to lead people. And of course, that was about 4 months before COVID. Yeah. It was
Mhm.
great. And so got settled in our new house in Iowa, put up my shingle of like my website, was getting ready to do all of these different things. COVID hit and it was like, well, number one, I can't leave my house. And number two, healthcare is busy. And so, yeah, I pivoted and I've been in 30 plus industries and I now keynote speak and do workshops and trainings. And it's been a wild ride.
Well, that's good because that's where the margins are at anyways. You know, I mean, it had to have been different, or I guess difficult or interesting to see like healthcare during COVID and how much it changed, not knowing what they were
Yes.
going to do, when they were going to do it. I mean, how would you lead somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or
Yeah.
even what could they do at a certain point in time?
Yeah, it was
I mean,
literally like really living moment by moment for them in terms of, what is some of the regulating bodies, what are they saying and who believes what? And just there were so many different dynamics around that. But I think, a lot of the content that I share and teach is really around the idea of how are you showing up? How are you engaging with the people around you? And then how are you adapting? And I think even though COVID was really a crazy time, those principles still apply. And so the before, during,
absolutely.
and after COVID, we're still talking about the same things, just different situations and scenarios along.
So what can you what can you glean from the healthcare industry
Yeah.
and put it over in, I guess, the rest of corporate leadership? And I'm
Yeah.
asking a question here. It's like, what I think I know the answer, that
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities because you already said that. But what can you take from healthcare and say, okay, this is what healthcare does well. So here's
Yeah.
what, ESPN or Disney needs to do.
It's so true. A lot of it, I think there's kind of a combination of what they do well, but then also what they don't do well. And there was opportunity to kind of like play with both. And I often will ask the question of like, what are some of the things that you're seeing in your team culture? And the idea of like, I'll ask usually three questions. What's the attitude right now? Like, if I invited your team to stand right behind me and I said to them, hey, I'm going to take a picture. Show me how you're feeling at this very moment. You know what? No matter what industry you're in, you have some people with big grins. You have some people with faces that are like, I can't believe this. Yeah. And then you have your crankies. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, thinking about the industry and the space and the place that you function, do we have an opportunity to kind of shift the attitude? And then I'll ask the second question, which is really around this idea of how are people showing up? Like, what is it normal to see? And this is fun, industry to industry, to ask some questions like, how many of you have had, a moment where you walked out of a meeting, you look to the person next to you and think, I don't even know why we met. That could have been an email. Or like, what is it normal to see? Geez, I wish they would quit hitting reply all. Why does everybody need to see this? There are like these things that I think across industries, they really do, cross really. And the idea is that what is it normal to see? And is it good? Like, do we have a lot of complaining? Do we have a lot of excitement? Like, what is it? And being able to kind of zoom in, zoom out. And then third is really kind of a really fun one. It's this idea of, what are the beliefs of the team? Does someone usually say, nothing changes around here? And you're like, oh, it doesn't? And they're like, no, I've been here forever. And I'm like, oh, so you believe that? They're like, darn Skippy, I do. And it's like, oh, yeah. Some of the beliefs come from organizational mission and values, but a lot of them are these unwritten things that over time we've created. And I think those are the types of things that when you ask it, each industry has their own version of that. It's
Of
fun to hear.
course. I mean, small or big too. It's
Hmm.
like, I've got one in-house staff member and then 3 remote. And it's
Yeah.
like, doesn't matter who I ask, there's always going to be, I mean, I guess I solicit the feedback,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm going to hear the same things from them as ESPN or Disney or
Yeah.
some other multinational, multi-billion dollar corporation. Slow to respond or slow to do
Yeah.
this, slow to do that. It's, there's always, everybody always has an idea of what they can do differently.
Yes.
So I guess how are you able to take that feedback and then put it into a good ripple effect?
Yeah. Part of that too is kind of zooming out and saying, okay, what does our culture look like? And then the question becomes, how are people showing up? I ask a question in my keynote. I'll say, okay, what's your favorite season? Do you like fall? Do you like summer? Or you winter? And, typically people can raise their hands and they're like, oh, I really like, a particular season. And then I'm like, okay, second question, how do you prepare for that season? Like, are you pulling out, sweaters and scarves and pumpkin spice? Are you like snow pants and skis? Are you like swimsuit and like suntan cream? What are you? And, they can usually say what they are preparing. And then I'll
Yep.
say, people prepare for you. When you walk in a room, have you ever had a moment where someone comes walking down the hall and you think, not today? I just can't deal with them today. And it's like people prepare, just like you prepare for that person, they prepare for you. And the first and smallest and easiest thing that you can tackle when it comes to your good ripple effect is your weather. Like, what's the weather that you're bringing into the room? If you come in cranky, people feel it. I was just at a Starbucks in Rockford, Illinois. I was getting ready to do a presentation, and I thought, I'm going to get a big, amazingly, like caffeinated coffee before I speak. And I walk in, and this, for whatever reason, this Starbucks, oftentimes, like the order ahead drinks are at the end. This was like right near the register. So it was really inefficient for like the people grabbing drinks and the people ordering. Like nobody knew who was doing what. I got really close to my drink and I could see it. Like I could see it right there. And I just had one person in my way and I kind of was like, "Oh, excuse me." And they turned around and sort of glared at me almost as if to say, "What?" And we did this like almost stare down of like, "Don't you know that I'm trying to get my coffee right now?" But I didn't say anything and I was like thinking to myself, I can decide how I react to this. Like I can, kind of treat her like she's treating me, or I can kind of show up, right? Bring a different sort of weather. And I said, "Look at that really pretty coffee over there." And she kind of looks over and I said, "That's mine. Do you think I could scoop by? I cannot wait to drink it." And I grabbed it and I like walked away and I thought to myself, like, your weather matters. Like she could have made me cranky and then I could have gone to my presentation and been a little like, fired up.
Little
It really is the
thundercloud.
easiest way to affect the room is your weather.
And that's, I mean, I've never really thought of it that way. And
Yeah.
it's very, very, very true. It's like if I'm a storm cloud, you know, Lauren's probably going to be a storm cloud too.
Yeah.
I'm pointing in that direction because
Yeah.
that's where she
As if they
sits.
were there. Yeah.
But yeah, as if they were there. She's not. She's remote today. So it doesn't really matter what my weather is. I
Yeah.
mean, except for me, or I could
Yeah.
project it onto you. I'm a ray of sunshine today because it's sunny outside and
Yeah.
it's, all the foot of snow from last week has melted.
Well, there
So
you go.
it was funny. Like last Sunday, we were supposed to get 1 inch of snow. We got
Oh, yeah.
12.
It's funny, I live in Iowa, so a little bit, more south of you, and I saw the map, I was like, "Whoa, those folks got so much snow." I'm glad it was you and not us.
And nobody was prepared for it. Like,
Yeah, I
the
bet.
county plows didn't come out until 8 or 9 at night, when normally during the winter, they're
Yeah.
running constantly.
Yep.
The people that plow our subdivision and driveways didn't have plows on their trucks.
Yeah.
It took them
We're, like,
until
hooking 'em up.
sometime middle of the night to get 1 truck put together to at least
Wow.
plow our road.
Yeah.
They didn't plow any of the driveways, and now it's all gone because it was 60 this weekend.
Yeah. Don't blink, it'll be the opposite.
But that's the reason why we have, trucks and four-wheel drive
Yeah.
vehicles.
There you
I
go.
mean, it was like, "Hey, we still gotta go do these things with the kids and whoever else." My weather that weekend was like, "This is fun." It's
Yeah.
like, we got enough snow where it can actually come over the hood,
Yeah.
while you're driving. I
Wow.
live on a hill, so it was like, "Alright, we're gonna go down the hill."
It's gonna
Snow's flying
fly
over the
off.
hood. It was awesome. It
That
was a
is
lot of fun.
awesome.
And my daughters were like, we're driving to Great Wolf Lodge, one of them had a birthday party,
Yeah.
and they were like, "This is so gross." I was like, I don't know what you're talking about." I was like, "This is fun." It's like, "We don't need your negative energy." I think I told her that.
Mindset
She was like,
matters.
"It
It's so
does." I was
true.
like, now I'm gonna tell her, "Change your weather."
Yeah. It's I mean, it is probably the easiest and quickest thing to do when it comes to either entrepreneurship or even leadership. Just thinking about how am I showing up? How
Or
is my
parenting.
team showing up? And just kind of saying like time out. Like, do we need to be something different? Attitudes turn into behaviors, which turn into beliefs. So if we want this to stick around, like we can keep doing what we're doing, or we can call a timeout and say, like, yeah, we need different.
So how much time do people give that? Like, how quickly do they make that decision? Like, is this gonna stick around, or do we need to change our weather? How quickly are they able
Yeah.
to, like, hop into that, "I gotta do something here" mindset?
Yep.
Which direction are they going?
I think when it comes to, let's say we're dealing with, a team, a lot of times I'll tell them, like, introduce the concept of weather. Like, we all bring the weather, whether we always had a morning meeting, which was a quick, 5, 10, like, we're planning for the day. And typically I would bring some sort of like fun fact or a thing that I've heard about or the most interesting thing that's come across my desk. And I would say to them, like, okay, interesting thought for the day. What if we bring the weather? And, giving just exactly what I had just said, some sort of version of that, and maybe a quick example of like just yesterday, I was over at, da da da. And then kind of saying to folks, I just think there's this opportunity. And it's almost like dripping on them a little bit of like introducing the concept and not necessarily being like, and therefore we now need to do everything different. It's more just like, have you thought about it? Right. And then half the people in the room will be like, no, I hadn't. The other half probably isn't listening. And then it's like, okay, a few weeks later, can you bring it up again? And after they've heard it 3 or 4 times, I have a 14-year-old son, and I often think about things in his terms, right? Like, how many times am I gonna have to say it maybe before he hears it? And how many different ways, you know? And so I think about it in that way of like, can you drip on them just a little bit? So they're like, yeah, I've heard of that. And then I will often say, okay, start taking a poll. Like I have a PB&J worksheet on my website and it's all this idea of like how are you running your one-on-one meetings? And the idea is you should have P, you should have B, and you should have J. P being get into their perspective. Like ask them a question or two of like, you know, do you think we're too busy to be friendly? Or, what would you think that the weather is right now? Like how would you describe the weather? And just start get like in healthcare terms, like take their pulse, like see where they're at. And then the B really stands for better ways. Can you get inside there like, "Hey, if you could fix one thing around here, what would it be and how would you do it?" And I just start to like collect those little like because a lot of times people sit there and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's been broken forever." And you're like, "Great, well, maybe we can work on that." And then the
Yeah,
last
how do
one
we
is
fix it?
joy. I wrote a book about joy and this idea that if you wait for joy to find you, you're going to wait forever. You have to curate it yourself. The book's called Joy is My Job. And that's really how I start to introduce the concept of weather is like drip on them a bit and then infuse it in your one-on-ones. And then, sometimes you can call once they have the concept and they've got some application to it. We had this really weird behavior in our one of our teams where they had a Starbucks in their building. And so every time we turned around, either myself or my supervisors that reported to me, they're like, 4 more people talks about how everybody's going to Starbucks and nobody's doing any work. And so we actually called a timeout in one of our morning meetings for that location. And I said, all right, timeout. And I handed out bow ties and long ties from Goodwill. I washed them, brought them to, our morning meeting. And I said, hey, we've got a timeout. Welcome to leadership. We've got a really interesting behavior and we get to decide because it's not in the HR handbook what we do about it. How are we going to handle it? And I basically put it back in their hands. They were divided out into groups of 4, and they had 5 minutes to think about what the rule should be, like the house rule. And it was really fascinating what some of the groups came up with because some people were like, no Starbucks. And some people are like, no, I think we could go to Starbucks if we rotate. And they ultimately came up with kind of their way of doing things by role. So, like, the nurses had a way of doing it, the front desk people had a way of doing it. And it was this idea that we're in charge of our impact and our ripple effect. So, therefore, when something weird happens or like icky, we can call a timeout and say, what do we want it to look like? And it's being
Yep.
intentional versus reactional.
So what did they come up with? Like, and what were
Yeah.
the differences? Like you mentioned nurses and
Yeah.
front desk staff. Like what did the nurses come up with? What did the front desk staff come up with? And what were the differences between the two?
Yeah. Well, it was funny because the front desk staff, they can't leave the desk. Like if everybody got up and went to Starbucks, right? Nobody would be manning that desk. And so they decided that they were going to rotate, that they had different times in the day that they liked coffee anyway. Like one person wanted coffee in the morning. Somebody else is like, no, I need a coffee at 2 o'clock. And so they came up with like a rotation sheet. And if you would have come around like the clinic front desk, it literally was like taped to their desk of like, this is the rotation of this. And then our nurses, they had a little bit more free flowing schedule, right? If I don't have a patient, I can go. And so they had a whiteboard where it was like Casey at Starbucks. And then they knew at least visually like who was where. And then some of the other positions had kind of like variations of that so that, it depends on the role. And that's what I ultimately was like, not everything works for everyone, but we have to come up with a way to make this either happen or not happen.
And not everything can be defined in a handbook.
No, that's what I literally was like, HR does not know about what we should do about Starbucks, and they don't care. Like, they have other things to do.
Yeah, they just want it to run smoothly and
Yeah,
efficiently. So
exactly.
you get to come up with the solution here.
Yes,
So now you're a champion as opposed to a draw on the system.
it's so true. And I think that really like that sort of intention really works in entrepreneurship as well. Like, sometimes we're dealing with problems and we're like, what do I do? And, I would say like live in the lab, be a little bit of like a science geek, right? With big goggles and a beaker and be like, we need to try something here. And then it's like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's change our mind. And it's the same whether it's leadership or entrepreneurship, testing something to see if it will work. Hopefully, small things at first. That really
Yes.
does give you a lot of insight into how to continue to adapt and maneuver in your business.
So, I mean, speaking of adapting and maneuvering, I mean, you were faced at the very beginning with kind of a very changing landscape, right?
Yeah.
So, if you look back on kind of your career, and everybody defines success differently, but I mean, you were hit with holy shit right away.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, as you look back at how you've progressed through the course of your career, what would you kind of define as your biggest successes?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a really good one. I think that there's probably 2. I really loved team leadership, and I loved when our team, like, all my metrics were good. That was, like, the day I got to look at my metrics and be like, "Someone should buy me a lottery ticket," right? Because all of our metrics, I think that was a really cool win. I probably have 3, so that's the first one. The second one, I wrote the book called Joy is My Job, and it's this idea that my husband and I decided to measure our joy like a bank account. Because when we looked at our calendar, all we saw was like our responsibilities of like have to do, have to do, have to do. And I kind of said to him, I think if we keep pushing joy off until, the kids sleep through the night, they're done with sports, this project is done, like insert the, justification on why we can't have
Sure.
it. We'll get to the end of our lives and be like, shoot, we were supposed to have fun back then. And so I think that for me is a success metric of just being able to say, I can be busy and find a little time for fun. And then I would say the third of owning my own business is really just more a laughter of like when I look back at some of the first presentations I gave or some of the first videos I created, it makes me cringe. But I think that's a success. Right? Like I'm like, that was really bad. Like my first PowerPoint, probably looked like it was made by, a teenager. And I'm like, "I've come so far."
And it might have been made with what's that Microsoft, the Clippy? Is that the guy
Yeah,
Clippy, the
exactly,
paperclip
pretty
that used to pop
much.
up?
Yeah, like
I
clip
think his name was
art.
Clippy. Yeah.
Yeah, mhm. Yep. I remember one of the first presentations I gave was around the holidays, and I think even one of them on the front side has, like, a little strand of Christmas lights, and I was like, "Oh, good. Yeah, that's good."
So in your book, Joy is My Job, so I mean, I see this a lot. I work with business owners and
Yeah.
basically medical professionals in my career. So it's like, and a lot of them, I'm going to say, let their careers define them.
Mhm. Yep.
So they have time. It's like they look for, like physicians, for example.
Yeah.
Let's say they get a week of vacation a month, just throwing it out there. They'll be like, all right, I got to work, 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 work. And then I get to have fun that week. How do you start to build in? Because I mean, that's one of the things that I preach is to try to like enjoy what you're doing while you're
Yeah.
doing it, as opposed to just being like, having a storm cloud weather storm and then a week of sunshine and then back to storm cloud. So
Yeah.
how do you get them to, I guess, enjoy things? Well, how did you and your husband do it to start? And then how do you project that on to your clientele?
Yeah. One of the first things that we did was we actually hung a whiteboard in our bedroom because we were like, I want to make a list of things that like bring us joy. We don't know what they are yet, right? We haven't
I
seen
can
joy
see
in a
this going a
while.
different way.
I know, I know. My husband's like, "Why do we what? We're gonna put a whiteboard where?" I'm like, "Yes, in our bedroom because I wanna create a list of things we could do, used to do, wanna do." And sometimes the only time we're
It's
together.
time.
I know, right? Yeah, is like before we fall asleep. And I said, when we wake up in the morning, I wanna add to it, and then I wanna move it from the whiteboard to our calendar. And I think that's the first thing is like, what brings me joy? If you ever, sat home on a Friday night, looked at your friend or your spouse and said, "Hey, where do you want to go to dinner?" And they're like, "I don't know. Where do you want?" And before you know it, you're like, let's just stay in. If you don't have a little list of things to like get you going, it's going to be a lot harder to when the time like is right. You're like, "Oh my gosh, we should have gone here, but we didn't." And so that's number one. And then in the book, there are some really cool joy challenges. And these are bite sized. So for like the physicians that are working 12s and 24-hour shifts, they've got really weird call schedules. I want to be able to give them like granular moments of like, what could you do if you had 1 hour for joy? And a lot of them will say, "Well, I don't have an hour." And I'm like, "Okay, great, 15 minutes." And a couple things like that my friends and I do is because I'm chauffeuring kids, I travel to speak. So sometimes I'm like, this week I'm headed to Branson, Missouri. So I'll be gone for a part of the time. But my friend will call and she'll say, "Hey, you got 15?" And that really means, "Are you available for 15 minutes?" And I'll say, "Yeah, where are you?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm 5 minutes away." I'm like, "Okay, great. See you in five." I literally meet her at the end of my driveway with like a glass of wine, a LaCroix, or sometimes a coffee. And literally we stand there with her van door open for 15 minutes, right? Like kind of, shooting the breeze. And then we're literally like, we cheers and we're saying, "All right, back to it. See ya." And it's this idea of like, can you mix up a meal? Can you find something in 15, 20 minutes? Like tie it to things that aren't time intensive and your
Yeah.
weather will be better. It will.
It breaks up the monotony
It does.
of, whatever it is that you are defining as what's making you busy.
Yeah, it is. Again, there's a ton of joy challenges. I actually will have a workbook coming on Amazon that have some even more fun, like joy challenges of like, if you were to throw a party. I had a good friend. I gave her the joy challenge of throwing a party. She's an extreme introvert. And she laughed at me and she goes, "Okay, fine." She texted me like 2 months later. She's like, "Lisa, I had a party." I'm like, "You did?" She goes, "Yeah." She had grown flowers in her garden all summer, had gotten vases from Goodwill, put them out by her garden, texted all of her friends and said, "Please join me at my garden party." I left vases and scissors for you to cut flowers, put them in your vase and like go away basically. And I was laughing. I was like, "So you weren't even at your own party?" She goes, "No." And it was so great. All day long, I was getting pictures of these vases of flowers. And she's like, "It was perfect." So there are some really fun ways to just kind of like mix it up. And depending on your personality or your preferences, my husband loves football. And so one of the things that we do every month is we try to get into each other's joy. That's the joy challenge of like be in someone else's
Okay.
joy. And so I'll sit there next to him and he's like, "Did you see that guy? The 50 rushing yards of whatever." And I'm like, "I did." And my whole job is just to enjoy his joy. And he tells me all about it. And before we know it, he's like, "Let me get a football from the garage. I'm gonna show you." You know, and I just laugh. I'm like, "Yeah, let's see it." So there are some fun ways to incorporate joy in bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to share this with my wife,
Yeah.
because I mean, she's a kindergarten teacher, right?
Yeah.
So it's like her day is so structured, like down to the minute. Like I've got to do, spelling or comprehension or
Yeah.
math, you know, in these 17 minutes, I have to teach this lesson and this. And then it's like, okay, the end of the day comes and I'm like, your day's done at 3 o'clock. Why are you still there at 7? And it's basically
Yeah.
because she takes probably an hour or two after work just to kind of go get a coffee,
Decompress.
decompress, just relax. And
If
I'm like,
somebody said I have 30 kindergartners for that many hours in a row, I would need more than an hour to decompress.
oh, yeah, yeah. But it's like trying to get her back on the horse to be like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to do my lesson for tomorrow and print off these things and assemble these pieces. It's like, okay, I know there's a couple hours of work every day for the next
Yeah.
day, even though her day's done at 3. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, you don't normally come home until 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I'm generally making dinner or getting the kids food, whatever it is. Transport. I'm
All
an
the
Uber and
things.
I'm an Uber and an ATM is what I am at this point in life. It's just like, okay, we've got to get so and so here, so and so here, so and so here. And it's like, okay, my joy is then that 30 minutes or an hour when they're at practice, I can sit there and doom scroll on Instagram or whatever
Yes.
and laugh at people hurting themselves or listening,
Everything
watching,
and nothing.
you know, dogs, dogs stub their toe or rip up something or bark at themselves in the
Too,
mirror.
yeah.
It's like, so I mean, we fit it in, but it's not scheduled per se. And I think it's a great idea, especially, I mean, the part that you mentioned about dinner
We're already doing it anyway.
resonates hard with me
Yeah.
because I mean, with a household of 4 women, it's like there is never an answer. It's
Yeah.
what do we want for dinner tonight? I don't know. I don't know. What do we have? It's
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
oh, okay. I mean, it's constant. I
yeah.
can never get a straight answer of, hey, I always have to come with, do you want to go out to this restaurant or this restaurant? Do you want to make this or this here? Or do you want to order pizza?
You're right. Well, it's funny that you say that because just last night, my husband does some weekend work, and so he worked a little bit in the morning, and then had a break, and then he had a shift after. And so, because we only had this little slice of time, my daughter and I decided that for our joy for that day was going to be charcuterie. And literally, we had in the middle of our kitchen counter a giant, ugly tablecloth and like bowls of things, and it was like all sorts of random. We got a couple things from the store, a couple things from our cupboard. And my husband walks in, he's like, "Hey." And then we're like, "Surprise." And we literally just had charcuterie and, ate all these random things. And then that was kind of our joy, for that day of just, okay, something different, whether it's like straws, the little cute umbrellas, mixing up the glasses. Sometimes it doesn't take much. It's just kind of almost like a visual for your brain to kind of be
Yep.
like, this is joy. And, there are moments when we're kind of like, oh, we're not in the mood. And then I usually will try to say to myself, do it anyway. Because about 15 minutes in, I have, let go of the fact that I didn't want to do this. And I'm kind of like, oh, I'm actually here now. Like, this is cool. So if you're not in the mood, I always say just do it anyway a little bit. And you sometimes can laugh at like how cranky you were at the beginning and how uncranky you were at the end.
It's that letting go of the anxiety of knowing you have to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
It's so
like
true.
my wife and I squabble all the time because it's like, hey, we have to do this. When we're doing it, it's fun, but it's like the lead up of being like, well, I've got to shower, I've got to,
Yeah.
put on clothes, I've got to get the kids together, I've got to pack their bag of, things to do wherever, drawing
Yep.
or reading a book. And it's like that takes over the
The brain.
mind.
Yes.
And you're just like, how do I snap out of that
Yeah.
to be able to then enjoy this thing that I just did all this work for?
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes too, it's like for our family, I find that if I plan it and I sit down, make it up the 15, 20 minutes where I look at my husband and I will usually do like, we call it our staff meeting. And we literally like sit there and we look at our calendar and we're like, okay, what do we want to do for joy this month? Do we want to have anything specific? Do we want to just, see what happens? Usually we try to make sure that there's like a handful of things on there This for this year, my mission was to laugh more. And so oftentimes we'll just do a quick Google search or like any comedians in the area, any open mic nights that are free, any Netflix specials that are coming up. And that seems to like kind of take the pressure off of like, I don't know, that we have a theme, right? And so we're
Sure.
usually looking for that. And then a lot of times, we'll do like night in and night out. Like, do we want to have something night in? Do we want to have something night out? And if you do just a little bit of that planning on the front end, it kinda just 'cause at least I do, if it's on my calendar, I do it. So once it's there, I'm like, "Oh, it's time for,
You're
this," and we're
committed.
like, "Oh, we're doing it." So, yeah, if that's helpful to for some folks. Other folks that aren't planners, that would make them crazy. So it's kinda like, do it the way that works for you, but for me, if it's on the calendar, I get it done.
And that's how do you see this impacting organizations? Because I assume that you bring this in
We
to,
do.
your organizational structure stuff. Can you give me a kind of an example of like, hey, I was working with this person or this team and got a bunch of crankies, and
Yeah.
then I had them insert, this, 15 minutes of joy a day or a week or whatever. What
Yeah.
did that do to the culture itself?
It's so funny. I have like so many examples. Sometimes teams will bring me in more from a standpoint of like, hey, we want to offer a joy session, talk a little bit about work, but also talk a lot about like outside of work. And so I'll do sessions that are a little bit more, I call them like personal, where we're thinking about joy ideas for like family and friends and life. I actually do I've with a wealth management client, they bring me in for retirees and joy, like what's on your joy calendar. And so they get to think about, they have extra time and what does that look like? And then others will be like, no, we want it to be more of a celebration and thinking personal joy. For the corporations who are like, hey, we've got a lot of people who are cranky, it's not been going well. And we talk about like professional joy. Some of it really comes down to this idea of crappy to happy. Like, we do all sorts of things that are crappy, unglamorous, have to do things at work, whether it's like Excel spreadsheets or, in construction, my construction guys, I'm like, hey, what's the worst job? And they're like, moving drywall. And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, that's pretty crappy. And they're like, it's crappy. And it's like, okay, what are the things that are unglamorous that you don't love doing? And how do you sneak joy in either before, during, or after? Before patient phone calls were automated, people manually had to call you, right? They had to be like, "Hi, so and so, this is so and so, make sure you show up." And we would have hundreds of phone calls to make per day, and nobody wanted that job because it was like continuously like voicemail, angry person, why are you calling me? And I would often say to that person, I'm like, all right, crappy to happy, what do we got? And they'd tell me, like, we got 272 phone calls. I'm like, all right, crappy, check. Happy? And then they'd look at me and they'd be like, I'm making, make it up, 75 phone calls and then I'm walking around the building. I'm like, all right, great. Or they're like, I'm ordering Starbucks in the afternoon. I'm like, perfect. And it's this idea that if you acknowledge the crappy and you think about either like before, during, or after, what's the happy? Like, how can you say to your brain, like, all right, enough crappy, where's the happy? It really does help you start to think about joy in this, like, it's not huge things. It's like tiny, small things. Even funnier, I had a woman walk up to me. She had to be a senior executive for the company that I was working for. She was dressed to the nines. She was a little bit older, had a very like stoic face. She walks over and she's like, crappy to happy. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yep, yep. What are you thinking here? Like, where is this going? And I said, yeah. She goes, I'm in that stage where I'm taking care of my kids, but I'm also taking care of my parents. I said,
Ooh,
crappy. She goes, yeah. And she goes, we just recently put my mother-in-law or my mother in a nursing home. And I said, also crappy. She goes, yeah. She goes, and I hate visiting her. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, crappy to happy. She goes, I'm going to bring Yahtzee next time because it was a game we played all throughout my childhood. And I think that will make it less awkward to just sit there and stare at each other and be like, how are you? Good, good. How are you? Good. It's like, yeah. And it was like,
making any friends?
yeah, exactly. Like crappy to happy. There you go. So it's really a part of it's mindset shift. And then the other part of it is like, how do you sneak it in there?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of crappy to happy, let's actually take happy to crappy
Yeah.
and, you know, talk about like your kind of rise through here and what you've obviously things are, you still work on it a lot, but,
Yeah.
you have happy now.
Yeah.
What was crappy, as you were building and learning how to do this?
Yeah. One of the main
What were the
reasons
biggest
why,
struggles, I guess?
my gosh, one of the main reasons why I think that this really came to be. We had a house fire due to lightning. So we had just moved in. It was our third night in this place. The house was 100 years old and it was in Milwaukee, so like big, tall, beautiful cream city brick looking home. And it's our third night there. We have boxes everywhere and lightning strikes our home to the point where if you've ever been in a building that's been struck by lightning, it sounds like a bomb has gone off. And you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Well, the night before the fire, my husband and I had spent a lot of time moving boxes to our third floor. It had a media room and an extra bathroom. And I thought, you know what, over this next weekend, I'm going to sort these boxes. So we moved our boxes, up to the third floor, fell asleep that night. Lightning strikes and it's so loud, and my husband says, "Maybe it was, like, the boxes that tipped over?" I'm like, "Maybe, I'll go check." He goes to flip on the light, it's not working, like, our overhead net light is not, but our hallway night light was, and he goes, "I'm gonna go check the breaker. Maybe it blew the breaker, I don't know." So he goes to the basement, I go to the 3rd floor, I don't really see anything. I meet him back on the main floor, he's flipped the breaker, and all of our outlets start buzzing like a cartoon, like, "zzz," and I call him,
Yeah,
I'm like, "Hey, something's not right." And so we end up putting our kids in the van in the pouring rain in the middle of the night, and we call the fire department and we're like, "Hey, can you just come take a look?" Like, we're not sure what's going on, but it just our gut told us, like, somebody should tell
get
us this
out.
is okay. So we're waiting in our van, angry fire guy in, like, the big suit walks up the sidewalk and is talking to my husband. I can see him almost say to himself, like, "Why am I here?" But ultimately, he does go in, he's gonna take a look, and a couple more fire trucks pull up behind me. I drove a black minivan at the time, and, all of a sudden, they start pulling hoses and axes and ladders off these trucks, and my son kinda snaps me out of it. He's like, "Mom, this is so cool." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you should not remember this." And then I'm thinking, "This is a real fire." So I ended up driving over to my aunt's house. I had a relative in Milwaukee. My husband stayed at the house, and he's not texting back. And I'm like, of all days, like, just freaking text me back. So I dropped kids off at daycare, like an hour and 2 hours later, and come back over to the house, and I see, like, wood and glass and beams everywhere, and my husband meets me at the front door, and he's like, "Do you remember how we moved all those boxes upstairs last night?" And I said, "Yeah," and he goes and it was almost like the, "You know that I know that you know." And ultimately, because the lightning struck right on the edge of the where the roof meets the rafters, basically it started a fire and that just like the wind of the rainstorm took off. So we were immediately, like in a few hours time, we were left with a huge fire and it changed the course of our next couple years. And we had just talked about the joy thing not long before that. And it was kind of our shove off the cliff of like, joy is your job. Like you can't predict what's coming your way and probably you should do it now because life is really short. And so when I think about like how did it come to be, for me, it was not this like, oh, I just want more joy. It was like we spent 2 years of our lives dealing with insurance carriers and moving again. And yeah, it really puts things in perspective.
So everything was wiped out, all the boxes that you had moved up there.
Yeah, it either a lot of that 3rd floor either burned or was super wet from fire hoses. The water ruined a lot more things. And one quick side note, when you have a fire, if your insurance covers it, what ends up happening is you have to go through all the rubble and account for everything. So that
Oh
takes
god.
like 2 days. And then after that, they have like your insurance carrier will coordinate movers to come and box all your stuff that did survive up and take it to be cleaned. So that takes 2 days. And then, finally you're like, when will I get all that stuff back? Like when can I get, my pots and my pans and like things that did survive? And the
Let me
guy looked
guess,
at me,
2
he
days.
goes, yeah, he goes 90 to 120 days.
My
And I was
gosh.
like, "What?" And he had, like, a blue sack in his hand, and he goes, "But this is a rush bag, so, like, anything that you want me to rush clean, anything that will fit in this garbage sack of a bag, you know," he goes, "I can rush it for you." So, literally, my husband when I went in, found, like, a few clothes, like, for us and for our kids, and, okay, we're like, "Okay, here you go." And then that was July 11th, and then we didn't get our stuff back till, mid-October.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so living without, like, any of your stuff for 4 months kind of makes you be like, "I miss those, measuring cups." Like like, "Where's my job?"
And you don't get to, like, Did you just buy stuff in the meantime?
So we ended up our insurance did cover renting furniture, so we moved to an apartment, they rented furniture, so we had beds and a TV, and then they bring you almost like what you would see if you go to a hotel and they have, like, the kitchenette, where it's
Okay.
got, like, a few bowls and pots and pans. They did bring us, like, a box of cooking things. So a lot of people at work, they were like, "What do you need?" And I'm like, I would just love an extra spatula." And so they were, like, bringing their things from home for me, and I was like, "I'll get it back to you probably, like, in 4 months." So, it was just quite the time to kinda be like, all the stuff that you thought was important wasn't, and yeah.
So, heck of an experience. How did you turn that crappy into happy?
Well, we told our kids, we were like, guys, joy is our job. And so if you would have asked our kids right around that time if they liked to go camping, they would have said, we love it. But you didn't, what you wouldn't have known it was apartment camping. So we told them that we were going to camp out in an apartment. And we literally, when you can do a lot of like fun games in an empty house or in an empty
Oh,
apartment.
yeah.
And so we had like bowling with toilet paper rolls and we had games and all the, just it kind of gave us permission to be like, yeah, screw it. And so we had a really fun 4 months. And I think it's stuck because, and I don't know why natural disasters sort of follow us here and there, but a few years later, we were at an Airbnb and a pipe burst in the hallway. And my husband comes in, he's like, "Our Airbnb is flooding." And I'm like, "Flooding?" I'm like, "We're on like the 5th floor of this building." And he's like, "There is water shooting through our front door." Well, a pipe had burst like right outside our door and was coming in. And he had one meeting that he was going to take from our Airbnb. He goes, "Why don't you take the kids somewhere and I'll finish my meeting and then you can come pick me up?" And I was like, "Okay." So I took our kids. We were actually in St. Louis, and there's a really cool hotel called the Union Station, and you can just like tons of stuff to see. There's a coffee place in there. I thought, okay, we'll go to Union Station. And I am stressed because I'm thinking, we're not staying in this apartment. Like, what are we going to do on our trip? And my son turns to my daughter, and, I had just ordered our coffees and I was kind of like overhearing what they were talking about. And he goes, "Elena, joy is our job. We cannot be sad about the flood." And I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like sweaty because of the flood. Here he is like explaining to his younger sister, like, life happens, get over it. And so it was the
Yeah,
perfect moment of, I think, again, like you kind of can make a situation what you want. And to think that that idea has now been a book and a workbook, and I go all over the world talking about it, I'm like, you can turn crappy into happy. Like, you can do it.
literally. I mean,
Literally.
you've lived it, you've been
Yeah.
faced with it. Your kids are now teaching it to their siblings.
Yeah.
You know,
So funny.
it's like that, if I can do it, anybody can do it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm gonna
It
have to
is.
try some of this with my kids because,
Yeah.
they're all girls, right? One of them's in middle school,
Yep.
and you'd think everything's a
Hard.
crisis all the
Yeah.
time. And you're like, "Stop for a second,
Yeah.
smell the roses, like, realize how good life is."
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to work on this, especially with her, because it's like that wave of emotions that's
It
coming right
is.
now is like a freight train and not
Yeah.
just a little gust.
That's so true. Yeah.
It's like, man, she can be the sweetest thing when we're talking right now.
And
She
two
can do a
minutes
little
later.
360 and is the devil. And you're
Yeah.
like,
And you're
what
literally like,
the hell just happened?
yes. I know. I have a 14-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl, so she's 6th grade. So we're right there with you. And
Yeah.
whew, it's rough.
And it's like me as a male who is, I think pretty grounded in logic and
Yeah.
not so great on the emotional side.
Yeah, you're like, "What is this?"
It's like, what am I doing right now? How
Yeah.
do I deal with this? Because I'm just like, how do I find a solution to this? Because that's the male prerogative, right? Find a
Yeah.
solution to everything.
Yeah.
Like, I got nothing.
Yeah,
I've
you're
got
negotiating on
nothing.
lip gloss. I mean, what are we here?
Oh yeah. I mean, literally yesterday after volleyball tryouts, she's like, "Hey, can we go to Sephora so I can put my Christmas list together?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not."
That sounds like her joy. She's gonna have that on her list.
I was like,
That's
"This sounds
hilarious.
terrible." I was like, "Why don't?"
The worst.
I was like, "We're not going to do it today. We're going to go get Starbucks right now, and then we can find another time in the next week where you and I have." And I put a time limit on it.
Yeah.
I was like, "Where you and I have,
30
45 minutes
minutes.
to an
Yeah.
hour, you know, where you can walk around, with your pad of paper
Paper.
and
Isn't that
start
funny?
writing down because Sephora, holy smokes.
I know.
Like, I don't know what these kids are doing now with their skincare routines.
Yeah.
It's makeup. It's makeup.
It
And you're
is,
like,
I
you're
know.
11 or 12. What are you doing? Like, she
Yeah.
spends 30 minutes or so in the bathroom every morning
Getting
doing
ready.
God knows
It's
what.
yes. I feel like
Like,
Sephora
you're
would make
12.
a jillion more dollars if they made, like, a little waiting area for parents. Like, just sit here and
Yes.
look through the window.
Give me a
And
cocktail and a place to
yes.
sit.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing? We probably need to start a store like that because I just need to be able to see my daughter from afar and know that she's, like, alive and hasn't been stolen. But if she wants to go and look at all that makeup and the tester things that they have are gross, like, if she
Yes.
wants to go deal with that, go for it, but I don't wanna touch anything.
No, I mean, you got however many people walking through there being like, ooh, this is smelly. This is
Yeah, like,
good.
let's look at
Let me
that.
try this lipstick.
Woof. Yeah, so
Gross.
true.
Man, yeah, I'm pretty sure we could probably go on for the next like 3 hours just
Huh,
about
yep,
teenage
yep.
girls. But let's not do that because I'll get frustrated and you'll be like, hey, crappy to happy. And I'll be like,
Yeah,
I don't know where any
yeah.
happy is in this.
What do you got? It's so
I got to
true.
change my weather and I don't know how to
Yeah.
do that right now.
Yeah.
So, as you're kind of coaching people, whether they're multinational company or startup, like what would be the biggest pieces of advice you would give them to improve whatever they're trying to improve? I mean, culture seems to be brought up a lot and
Yeah.
finding joy, but I mean, what are the biggest pieces of advice? Can't talk right now. What are the biggest pieces of advice that you have, for somebody aspiring to be, excuse me, better person, better business
Yeah.
owner, better whatever it is?
Well, of course, I'm going to say, like, find your, joy, number 1, because
Here's my surprised
entrepreneurship
face.
especially, yeah, it's like, it's a wild ride, and so if you can have I would say, like, you put money into your bank account and you take that out on a rainy day, you need to have joy on your calendar and kind of in your joy bank so that when you do have a rough day, you're not, your tank's not on empty, and so that's number 1. Number 2 would be live in the lab. I am constantly experimenting and I think it goes hand in hand to say, if anybody walks over to you and says, well, I can't believe you're doing that, right? Or even when I wrote my book, I'm like, is it the best book ever out there? No. But if somebody was going to walk over to me and say, I didn't like it, I think I would smile back at them and in a really genuinely curious tone be like, I'm doing hard things. What are you doing? Because most people, right? Sometimes you get a little nervous of like, well, I'm scared to put that out there, or I don't know. And I always just say, it's like an experiment. Many experiments fail the first few times. So get out there and just do it anyway. And if anyone says, like, I don't like it or you didn't, it wasn't good, if you just say to them, I'm doing hard things, like, what are you up to? They will get quiet pretty quick because anybody doing hard things knows. And then the third is just like finding ways to make a difference. I think your impact can be like being kind at the coffee shop to the people that maybe you don't agree with their views in the world. Like that goes a long way.
Be a storm cloud.
Don't be a storm cloud.
Change your weather.
It's so true.
See, it's sunny behind me.
Yeah, hang on to that.
I'm a ray of sunshine today,
There you
but I
go.
could very easily turn into a thunderstorm.
It could. It could. So
Sometimes
that'd
you
be
have
my
to,
advice.
especially with teenage girls.
Yeah, wait till 4 p.m. today.
Yeah. I got to pick her up from the Y, I think at 4:30. So that's
There you
when
go.
I don't know whether or not I'm going to get a storm cloud or,
Not.
well, it'll be some sort of storm cloud. I can
Yeah.
guarantee that
It's so true.
because she's with all of her friends now, right? So it's like,
Yes.
so and so was not nice to me today.
Mhm. Those will be your coworkers someday.
Those will be your coworkers. You have to figure out how to find your joy and
You
change their
do.
weather.
Yeah, it's so true.
So, as we kind of wrap up episodes, we usually give our guests, a few minutes to kind of have the floor. It's your
Yeah.
time to either, promote yourself, discuss something that's important to you, continue on giving advice. It's your time to kind of go give our listeners a little bit extra of what Lisa even has to offer and talking
Yeah.
about having a good ripple effect.
It's so true. Well, I would probably say one of my favorite quotes is like, you happen to the world, not the other way around, whether that's leadership or life. And if there's something that you're sitting there thinking, like, I want to happen to that. Like, I want to see that be, more or less. My advice is get out there and do it. And of course, if you're looking for a speaker or someone to come in and do a workshop, again, I'll do association events and keynote speaking events at conferences or even workshops with your team, virtually or in person. Reach out. I'd love to have a conversation around what are you seeing and experiencing and what does your audience need. So, lisaeven.com is where you can find me. And yeah, get out there and happen to the world.
It's like you already knew what my next question
I
was.
knew
How do our
it.
listeners get in touch with you? So lisaeven.com, that has, your contact information, and I assume some resources out there too for things that jog their memory.
It does.
Um, All right, perfect. So lisaeven.com. So as you know, my name is Derek DeLomo. I'm the owner of both Tremonti Financial Consultants and Tremonti Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tremonti. Tremonti bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to help develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. If this idea piques your interest, please go to TremontiTax.com and schedule a 15-minute chat with me. Whether or not we end up working together or not, I'd love to hear from you. With all that said, Lisa, it was really good talking to you today.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
For those of you listening, if you enjoyed today's episode and had a few helpful takeaways, we'd love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with other business-minded friends. This has been another episode of the Traversing Entrepreneurship Podcast. We had fun today and hope you did too. Thanks again, Lisa, for being here, and thank you for tuning in and listening. Peace.
This podcast is presented by Tremonti Financial Consultants, LLC. The firm is registered as an investment advisor and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. There are no assurances that a portfolio will match or exceed any particular benchmark. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.